Thank you very much, Mariana, and thank you all for turning up. Um, I think this is a really important space that we have and a very important conversation that we're having tonight. The only thing I wished is we were having it in better circumstances. I grew up in the 90s, and like many of people here, I have older brothers and sisters who really went through the struggles of the 80s and the 90s and more and profound racism that I experienced. But I think it's important for us to talk about our backgrounds and our experiences, because I think our experiences, although our experiences are similar in some regards, I think they affect us differently, and how we grow up and how we see the world and how we progress. Now, my parents, I'm of Somali background. My parents came to this country in the early 90s as Somali refugees. And they turned up here, not having any money in their pockets, and came here for the sake of saving their lives. And they were poor. My dad, in fact, was a factory worker after coming to the country. My mother took up cleaning. Now, we're not a small family. I'm one of 10, so we're quite a big family. But my parents, from the get-go of arriving in this country, they had to really fend for themselves. And it was under a Conservative government at that point that they had to fight for work. And I remember my dad and mum, before the minimum wage came in, for example, were earning something that was around £1 an hour each, which, as anyone can know, is hard to live on, more so when you've got 10 mouths to feed. Now, growing up, I think I had it easier than my brothers and sisters, because they were much older than me, and at the time in the 90s they were all going through high school or college or university, so I got to learn from their mistakes a lot of the time, but also I became aware of some of the challenges that they faced. I remember constantly my brothers and sisters being harassed by the police. I remember very vividly them being stopped and searched for no reason whatsoever, sometimes happening on Fridays when they were coming back from the mosque with my father. So I guess from a young age, that memory stuck with me. But the one memory that really I always remember is, I remember at the age of 7, after 9/11, I was walking down with my mother in Ealing Broadway, and she's a hijab-wearing Muslim, and her hijab was torn off from her by a man who was fairly drunk and spat in her face and said, we don't want terrorists in this country. My mum was frail and bless her, as a 7-year-old, for me, the most what made me really angry was the fact that I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't protect her, I couldn't help her. My poor mother was standing there crying, unfortunately. And growing up in the sort of school system, I remember, going to primary school, and at the age of 10, I remember a primary school teacher saying to me, yeah, you're just going to turn out like the other ones, like your brothers and sisters. And for some subconscious reason, that's always been at the back of my mind. Whenever I do anything, in terms of job, in work or education, it's always been, try to outdo them rather than me addressing what that teacher said directly, which has really stuck with me. And at the age of 11 or so, my parents decided that we should move back to Somaliland, which is the northern part of Somalia. When we lived there for 7 years, and it was a great country, but I had a problem because I didn't know where I was supposed to fit in, because I went back and I couldn't speak the language, and people said to me, you're born in London, you don't understand us, you're not one of us. I came back here and people were telling me to go back home. So for me, growing up, I guess that conflict has always been in my head. I've never called myself English because I don't think I am. I'm a bit more comfortable with British, but it's the constant thing that goes in my head. Am I really from this country? Do I belong in this country? And it's the voices that I hear in my head that I have to say, yes, I am. I'm entitled to this country as much as anyone else. I'm a tax-paying person. But unfortunately, my experience has left those voices in my head. I'm not going to go into any further, but that's really my experience, and I think it's affected me in ways that I haven't appreciated before. But I've reflected on it over the last couple of weeks, and I think I've fallen short of sometimes calling out racism and laughing along, and when someone makes a comment about your skin color, and I think going forward I'm never going to do that again. I think these last couple of weeks have really had that impact on me personally.